Hi, everybody. We're going to call this special meeting of the Board of Education for June 22nd, 2026 to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance. So I want to thank everybody for making it. This was this is an unscheduled meeting that we called to deal with a number of pressing issues here at the end of the school year. So I appreciate everybody's time. And we want to note for the public, the folks that are remote or are remote because of the unscheduled nature of this and everybody moving things around so they can be here. So I appreciate everybody who moved things around so they could be here tonight. And we'll try to be as expeditious as we can here. The first agenda item is the board speaks to the board goals. And we're happy to have Tom Mooney here, Attorney Mooney here to help us with this. One of the suggestions when thinking about the goals for the 26-27 school year that we had last meeting was to identify some point people or some point committees for some of these things, because there are a lot of bullets here that speak to what we as a board want to try to get done next year. And instead of just leaving them as this bulleted list, it was actually Sophie's idea to support, to try to work through and try to assign some tasks to the different areas of the board. As part of that, we wanted to bring Tom here because Tom can speak as basically the authority in at least Connecticut on board governance, what Board of Education members can do and what we can't do when it speaks to how we live and how we realize some of these goals and some of these issues. So that's why we thought it would make sense here, kind of a retreat fashion, to both talk about how we want to tackle these things and then who. So all that said, I don't know if you have anything you want to, in looking at this, anything you want to say off the bat, or if you want to talk us through some things. Yeah. Sorry. Or you can sit here. I can sit next. Oh no.
Dr. McCanty Anthony, if Attorney Mooney is going to do a lot of speaking, it would make more sense for him to sit in Ms. Krause's spot, just so the people at home can hear.
There you go, Tom.
There is a microphone at the podium.
Oh.
So you all have the handout. I understand we have a board member who is remote. 2. Okay. Well, given that fact, what I'll do is I have some introductory remarks, and then mainly I'd like to walk through with you some scenarios of board operation to hear how you think you should operate, and then I'll straighten you out. And just a little background. It's been my privilege to work with the Greenwich Board of Ed for about 20 years, and I've been representing boards of ed throughout Connecticut for, this is my 50th year representing boards of education, and I teach school law at UConn. So this is my life, and I've had an opportunity over the years to see what works and what doesn't work. And so through these scenarios, I hope that we can talk together about how you want to operate as a board. But just to frame this, I'd like first to say I have such great admiration for all of you. I'm often in meetings where I'm the only one getting paid. You are serving your community. And it's quite a labor of love for you. And so I start with that recognition that you're here because you care about your community. And it's sometimes it's that care that causes the problems because you feel invested. Well, there's a problem here and I should solve it. And there are many problems you do have the opportunity to solve and many that you don't because of your role as a board. So let me just start with a simple question, and that is, who here went to middle school? You all went to middle school? Good, good. That's so far when I've asked the question, that has been the answer. And why would I care? Why would you care about whether you went to middle school? And that's where you learned about the three branches of government, right? So I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but what are the three branches of government?
So let's see.
Legislative, executive,
Judicial.
and judicial. Right. So those are the three branches of government. And what branch are you? Legislative. So why do you say that?
Supported the policy. We're driven by policy and policy making, and that is our official role.
And that's an essential legislative function, right? What does Congress do on a good day? They okay. And when they do show up, they pass laws. And what's another fundamental responsibility of the Congress that they haven't been too good at lately? Adopt a budget. So those are the two essential legislative functions: to pass the rules that regulate the affairs, whether it's of the country through law, or whether it's of the Greenwich Public Schools through policy, and adopt the budget. So there are two other branches of government. Who's the executive? You're pointing at the superintendent. And there's actually, I'm sorry, you weren't, yeah. There's a state law that explicitly says that the superintendent is the chief executive officer of the board. So, and through the scenarios, we'll talk about policy roles and judicial roles and operational roles. But the third branch of government is the judicial function. Do you ever serve as board members in a judicial function? When would that be? I'm sorry, go ahead.
An expulsion hearing or residency?
Perfect. Those are two good examples. Let me just ask, I'm sorry. That's grievances are contractual in nature, and actually I don't consider that a judicial function. When you think about what you want in a judge, what word comes to mind? I want my judge to be fair, impartial. And so when you serve in a judicial role, it's your responsibility to be impartial. And we'll talk a little bit later about conflicts of interest and how you respect that role. But there's one other important judicial function, and that is, let me just ask a question. Who can hire a teacher? The superintendent. And that's because you as a board, as every other board in Connecticut, have delegated that responsibility. Who can fire a teacher? Right? Nope. Only the Board of Ed can terminate the employment of a teacher. And so in these rare circumstances, you could be called upon to exercise that judicial responsibility. And as again, we'll talk about a little bit later, there are circumstances where you have to be very careful about that. In the materials I've provided you, and we can get these to the board members who are remote tomorrow electronically, but it's not essential that you have this in front of you to participate in the meeting. But the first 2 pages are just the outline, and you see at the bottom, impartial judge, and you mentioned expulsions, school accommodations hearing, transportation hearings. Even you could serve a judicial function over where a bus stop is placed. Isn't that weird? Because transportation is an essential element of school accommodations. And people who feel that they've been denied school accommodations have a right to bring that complaint to the board. And as I mentioned, tenure hearings. On the second page, there's some information, the freedom of information issues are listed briefly. And the freedom of information law just hangs over you, regulates pretty much everything you do. You have to be careful about posting your meetings, providing the public access to meetings, preserving records, providing access to records. There are certain records that are confidential. But what I wanted to do before we get into the scenarios, because I know that I have limited time, is just very briefly caution you about email. When the Freedom of Information Law was passed in 1975, do you remember what email was like in 1975? Right. The one thing I can say is that in 1975, Dick Tracy had a two-way wrist radio, and I now have a two-way wrist radio. But there was no, in fact, so in this memo, we start with what is a meeting of the board. And in the middle of the page, we see that the definition of a meeting in the Freedom of Information Law includes any communication by or to a quorum of a multi-member public agency, whether in person or by means of electronic equipment. And let's pause there. 1975. What could that mean? By means in person or by means of electronic equipment? Exactly. Speakerphone. And you could include, now we have Zoom, but that was what that meant. Just so if board members were on a conference call or in person, and then the definition goes on, to discuss or act upon a matter over which the public agency has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power. And the critical words there are discuss or act upon. So whenever a quorum of the board communicates on a matter within your jurisdiction, you're in a meeting. And if you haven't posted it, you're in violation of the Freedom of Information Law. And so that's where email can cause the problem, because you're free. Every email you write or receive related to the operation of the Greenwich Public Schools is a public record. Some of those emails are confidential, like when I write an email to your chair, that's an attorney-client privilege communication, but it's still a public record. It's confidential by its nature, but it's still a public record. So every time you write an email related to the operation of the Greenwich Public Schools, it's a public record, and you just need to be aware of that. But the real danger comes with the option of reply all, because as soon as you reply all, you took a step on a path, which is a very short path, before the commission will say you're having a discussion. So for example, when the superintendent sends you the weekly update, that's communication among a quorum. But it's okay. It's not a meeting because it's not a discussion. And if any individual board member writes back to the superintendent and says, I didn't know we were going to talk about the world language program, that's fine. You've created public record, but it's perfectly fine. But when you reply all, I didn't know we were talking about the foreign language, the world language department. Is that a discussion? Some other board member says, oh yeah, we did last week. Now it's clearly a discussion. So when you communicate, it's important that those communications by email be individual and not among a quorum. And I don't want to disappoint you, because I've done this a long time, but I have lost cases. And one of the cases I lost was on this very point, where a board member was upset about something and wrote a nastygram to the full board, addressed it to the chair, but all the other board members were on the email. With advice of expert counsel, the board chair responded. And because everyone had gotten the nastygram, the chair wanted everyone to hear what the response was. And then the board member wrote back, again, still unhappy. Someone's brought us to the Freedom of Information Commission. I mean, it's kind of a normal kind of thing, but they said that was an illegal meeting. And so on behalf of my client, I said, wait a minute, it was just two people talking. It wasn't a discussion of a quorum. The other people were just watching. Now you know why I lost that case, because everyone was on that email. And so the commission held that that was in fact a discussion of a quorum of the board. So the two middle pages here are just an elaboration on those concepts, defining what's a meeting, and describing the circumstances when you need to be careful. So that's the framing of this. And I'm want to be respectful of your time. If you're ready, I'm ready to jump into some scenarios where you get to talk about how you want to operate as a board. So with your permission, that we have 5 scenarios, and we'll see if we can get through them. The first is 3 members of the board post a letter on Facebook in which the board members talk about the upcoming budget and they urge people to vote in favor of the budget. The board members identify themselves as members of the Board of Ed. You got the picture? 3 members are on Facebook advocating. Other board members see the letter and are mad that these 3 board members did not let them know about the letter in advance. Did the 3 board members do anything wrong?
Given the crickets in the room, I'm going to say no.
They didn't do anything wrong. Okay. Would it have been better if they had let the other board members know of their intent to issue this letter?
So it would have been courteous.
It is a courtesy. It might also be a violation of the Freedom of Information Law, because in a circumstance like that, if a quorum, this has happened numerous occasions, and I'm innocent of all these occasions. I wasn't involved, but where the board issues a letter and some local grouch says, oh yeah, when did you discuss that? And turns out that it was not discussed at a public meeting, and so it's a violation. So if you're correct, these board members did nothing wrong, but it would have perhaps been better practice to bring that issue to the full board in a discussion in a posted meeting. Yes, please.
I have a question. Just have a question on this.
Sure.
Can 3 members of the Board of Education ever be considered a quorum,
No.
even if they're on the same committee?
Well, you changed the question, right? A quorum by Robert's rules is a majority, and you're a 9-member board, so a quorum is 5. But a committee typically would have 3. What, pardon? 8 members. So it still would be 5. But thank you. That's a hard one to get used to.
Tell me about it.
Right. But committees are often 3. In fact, I've had the privilege of speaking at the annual conference of the Freedom of Information Commission for many years now. And one of the scenarios posed was a committee of 3. Can one person call the other policy committee? Hey, what do you think of that new policy? Or is that an illegal meeting? And guess what? It depends. Because if the one board member calls another board member of the same political party, that's a caucus. And it's not an illegal meeting. But if the person is of the opposite political party, it's a quorum of a committee, and committees are public agencies under the Freedom of Information Law. So anyway, should I move on?
Yes, thank you.
You know, but your question is a good one, because it shows that distinction. But for you, it's 5 as a board and 3 as a committee. I don't think this is going to come up otherwise, just a related question. The BET is meeting. A quorum of the board goes to the BET meeting. Do you need to post that? Because a quorum of the board is assembled to do that. And the answer is no, you don't. Karen was on top of that one. Right, because it's a properly posted meeting of the BET. And as long as you don't spend time in the parking lot as a quorum of the board talking about it, then it's not a meeting of the board. And this can come up, let's say there's a policy that is, there's significant public interest. And the policy committee has 3 members, can 5 members of the board, can 2 members of the board not on that committee attend that meeting, or does that create a quorum that's a problem that has to be posted? Is the scenario clear? Okay. And the answer to most legal questions is it depends. And it depends, in this case, it depends upon how that meeting was run. If it remains a meeting of the policy committee and the other board members are treated as any other member of the public, it's perfectly fine. But as soon as the policy committee welcomes the other board members to participate fully in that meeting, it potentially morphs into a meeting of the board, and a problem is created. So that's a distinction that I wanted to share. Are you ready for scenario 2? Okay, scenario 2. You run into an acquaintance at the post office and she complains that her son's 4th grade teacher has not returned homework to her students in 2 months. You want to help her, but after reviewing board policies, you determine that there's no board policy on whether and when teachers must return homework to students. You check with other board members on whether they've received similar complaints about this teacher, and they have not. Do you share this information with the superintendent? I'm seeing some nods. I'm seeing some ambivalence. And it's a choice that you make. But I would just say that you, as representatives of the community, you hear from people. Quite often, the superintendent benefits from your sharing what you've heard so that the superintendent, in doing her job, can look into it. Yes, sir.
Could you share that information as a concerned parent? Or
I question the premise. In other words, if you're a board member, you might be a parent and you may act in that role as a parent as to your own children in the school system. But if they're not your children, aren't you acting as a board member?
fair point.
So I would just encourage you to, you don't have to. And in fact, you hear a lot, and sharing every tidbit with the superintendent may burden the superintendent. But you are certainly free to share that information. And now what can she tell you? And well, to back up for a second, and this goes to my opening remarks. You are all here because you care about your community and you want to help. So that parent shares that with you. And so an impulse would be to help. Let me look into it. And the last question here in this scenario is, when and how should you report back to the parent who raised the concern. And the answer is you shouldn't, because it's not your job. The operational issue, whether that teacher's returning homework, is a responsibility for the superintendent. But what you can do, and the way I put it is, you start by saying, I'm sorry, you've mistaken me for someone who's important. I'm a member of the Board of Ed. I'm not responsible for the operation of the school district, but there's a chain of command. And if you have a concern, we care about your concerns. Have you talked to the teacher? Have you talked to the principal? Have you talked to the assistant superintendent? That's the chain of command. So you can help that person understand your role and how they can get relief. There are certain circumstances where under board policy, an issue will come to you. But unless and until that happens, you're really best served to inform the parent that this is a serious matter, but here's how you handled it. And I can't. And so there's not there's not a single answer to the middle question, what can she tell you? Where, and we'll talk a little more about this later, where it has to do with performance of teachers. It's not really your role. The superintendent evaluates the performance and in fact holds people accountable, and in rare occasions moves to separate them from employment. I would just say that if the superintendent thanks you for the information, I have this, that would typically be an adequate response as opposed to reporting back to you on what was found and so on. The third scenario deals with the Freedom of Information Law again, and this is where you may want to help your friends understand your special status now as a member of the Board of Education. And here's the scenario. A good friend of a board member sends the board member an email marked personal and confidential to the board member's personal email. In that email, the friend of the board member complains to the board member that a teacher was mean to her daughter. A reporter makes an FOI request of all board members for a copy of any email that was sent or received from a third party during a specified time period, which time period includes the email in question. Just again to pause there, sadly, in some circumstances, the Freedom of Information Law has been weaponized by people who are unhappy with what's going on. And these trolling requests, let's see what I can find, are sadly common. I hope that you haven't had those experiences, but it's a fairly frequent occurrence where people will just cast the net. I want to see all the emails from Joe to Sally for this period, or from all the board. It can be a real problem. And it was not in the contemplation of the General Assembly when they passed the Freedom of Information Law in 1975. But so we have this. One of your friends writes to you, your personal email, their personal email, about something that happened in the school district. Is that a public record? It's on your personal email. It's on her personal email. Is it a public record? Sophie, is that still your answer? Yes, it's a public record. Does this particular public record have to be disclosed pursuant to the FOI request? Well, this is one of my rare opportunities to share some good news. It doesn't, because that's a FERPA protected record because it relates to a student. There are certain exemptions. For example, you could be talking about negotiations, legal advice, FERPA, student records. And so we start, the first question is it a public record? And I emphasize here that almost any recorded information that you create or receive, and that's the critical point to this scenario, is a public record if it relates to the operation of the Greenwich Public Schools. And so there was a district up in central Connecticut where a friend of the board chair and the board chair were having all sorts of fun in a witty email exchange about racial balance. There's nothing witty about racial imbalance per se. And someone did a trolling email and all of those emails had to come out. Even though it was, and back to your question, a parent as a board member, if it relates to the business of the Greenwich Public Schools, you really can't separate from your other affiliations and friendships. So anyway, that's just, so to the extent that you do have friends and they email you about board business, you just might want to caution them that they're creating public records and there's nothing you can do about it. And whenever we talk about email, I always have to remind people the telephone still works. And when people call you, they're not creating a record under the Freedom of Information Law. Scenario 4. And I welcome your questions. So please, as we're going through this, if you have other questions, don't hesitate. And perhaps when I'm done, if you have other questions, I'm happy to answer them. But scenario 4 is as follows. Yesterday, the patch, do you have a Greenwich patch? Oh, good. Yesterday, the patch published a story about a teacher in your district who was arrested for running a meth lab. The article identifies the teacher by name and school. Parents from that school come to the next board meeting, and during public comment, several of them address the board to express concern that this teacher must be fired immediately. A fourth parent who comes up to speak attacks the board for sitting there silently, quote, like bumps on a log, and asks the board members what they're going to do about this teacher. Should the board members sit there like bumps on a log during public comment? Yeah. And one important thing is people come and there are many legitimate concerns. And in fact, even where you're only hearing one side, I don't question the sincerity of the concerns expressed by someone when they come to public comment. That's quite a burden to publicly, stand up and complain. But in public comment, you're only hearing one side of the story. And I have many circumstances where the person in public comment says, the superintendent is ignoring me and, I'm desperate and I need and then it turns out that the superintendent has met with the person twice after the assistant superintendent met with the person. So it's advisable to let people say what they want to say. It's important that they have that opportunity. But if board members engage in the discussion, it could be misleading because you're only hearing part of the story. So sitting there like bumps on a log is the common practice. And some districts, and I don't know if you've done this, but I presume that when you have public comment, you limit public comment to 3-5 minutes, whatever it is. That's perfectly appropriate under the First Amendment. You're creating a forum for public speech, for public comment. So you have to worry about the First Amendment. But reasonable regulation as to time, manner, and place of speech are permitted. And so when you're, say, 3 minutes that's perfect. That's a reasonable restriction so that people all have the opportunity to speak. The one thing to keep in mind is that a rule like that has to be applied with an even hand. When people are saying nice things, you just can't bask there for 5 or 10 minutes in the nice things. When somebody's making a critical comment, 3 minutes, you're up. So you need to apply that uniformly. Some boards actually have on the bottom of their agenda, we welcome public comment. We want to hear from you. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes, but they actually also put on their agenda, please understand that the board will not be responding so that people's expectations, they're not going to say later, well, why, they just sat there and listened. Well, in fact, that is in fact the whole point of public comment, to sit there and listen. And finally, we have this teacher who is arrested for running a meth lab. That's a matter of some public interest. And people may be calling you and saying, what's going on? What's going on? And you may be calling the superintendent, what's going on? What's going on? But this is where you have to be careful about your judicial responsibilities. In a serious case like that, it's quite possible that that matter will come to you as the judge, whether that person's employment should be terminated. And as you said before, you want to be impartial. And so when a superintendent has a matter of some public controversy and board members have a very understandable interest in knowing what's going on, it's the superintendent's responsibility to tell the board member, this is a personnel matter and I can't really get into it. And that's not because the superintendent wants to hold the information. It's because the superintendent wants you to be able to continue to do your job if and when it comes to you. And over 40 years ago, I had a traumatic experience that haunts me to this day. And that is on this point. A superintendent recommended that the high school principal not be renewed. The high school principal invited 400 of his closest friends to the high school auditorium for the hearing. So here we now have the board up on the stage in the auditorium. 400 people. I don't remember if there were signs, but they were clearly there on behalf of the principal. The very first thing the lawyer for the principal did was called board members to the stand. And the first board member, hey, isn't it true that you told Sally at the Stop and Shop that you're going to get rid of my client? And you can well imagine that the status of a high school principal is a matter of significant public interest. And you can further imagine that you as board members, either based on your personal experience or what you've heard, could have an opinion about that. But by saying to this person, yeah, I got this, that board member had betrayed that board member was not acting impartially. And in fact, 3 board members had been in the community talking about how they were going to get rid of the high school principal, and each of them had to testify at the hearing, at the beginning of the hearing, as to those conversations. And so in front of the 400 people, we watched our case just collapse. And we had to do what they describe on TV. We settled. So it's a cautionary tale that I just wanted to share with you. The last scenario has a couple different facets. A board member is Facebook friends with a teacher. And that's a special kind of friendship, isn't it? When you're a Facebook friend. In a post on his Facebook page, the teacher complains that his principal unfairly denied him 3 days of personal leave to attend nature's classroom in a neighboring school district to serve as a chaperone for his 5th grade son. The board member calls the principal to find out what the problem is. So you're on Facebook, you read that this teacher is upset. So the board member calls the principal and says, what's the problem here? Then the teacher files a grievance, which is denied at the lower steps and is now before the Board of Education. Can the board member who called up to say what the problem is participate in the grievance hearing, or does that board member have a conflict of interest preventing him from participating? Conflict of interest? The answer is maybe, or it depends. What is a conflict of interest? How do you as board members define what a conflict of interest is? Any takers? Go
Well,
ahead.
This scenario does sound like a conflict of interest
Okay, and why?
because you're basically interjecting yourself in between the principal and the teacher.
Mhm.
And then you're biased, But I'm sorry, not biased, you're conflicted. Because now
Well,
you're
you've
you're
demonstrated-
you're within it and not without of it. That
You-
makes
you-
sense.
Yeah, you've raised a question as to whether you're approaching this impartially or not. But don't you have the right to an opinion as a board member?
I don't know if you have I mean, everyone has a right to an opinion.
Well, let
but
me
do you have
give
the
you
right to
a-
publicly
a-
voice your opinion? Is
I'm
that,
sorry?
do you have the right to publicly voice your opinion? Is that?
I would, yeah, I think so. It's a free country, but let me give you a related scenario. Before you were elected to the board, you were heavily involved in youth athletics. This is your passion. This is good for kids to be involved in sports. And now you're on the board, and this may be old news. I'm just going to take a guess that the football field at the high school has lights. Yes, no?
We can neither confirm nor deny.
Okay, fair enough. But let's just say now the question comes to the board. Should we spend the money to put lights on the football field? And this is something you as a person have been supporting for 10 years. Is it a conflict of interest for you to say, yes, hooray, I'm voting in favor of lights at the high school? It's not a conflict of interest. So your perspective on a particular issue isn't necessarily a conflict of interest. Sophie, did you have something you wanted to say previously?
I just had a thought about this idea of the teacher. I feel like I would want more information. When you say someone is a Facebook friend, right? It suggests friendship, right? And that could sway your opinion of the situation.
Uh-huh.
But some people have, 20,000 or 100,000 Facebook friends, so it's not meaningful. So I feel like it's like the nature of the relationship with the teacher. If it was
Uh-huh.
like a Facebook friend who you chatted with, every day,
Sure.
then I feel like there might be more of a conflict of interest. Like this is actually a friend,
Right.
like a close friend, and then you're advocating what's going on.
And
That's
so-
different to me.
So you're saying if it's a close friend, that's a conflict. And what's the underlying rationale for that conclusion?
Well, I think if you are advocating for your friend, if you're using your role as a board member to advocate on behalf of your friend to
Right.
ensure that they get their personal days, that would be a conflict of interest.
And I think you're right. But take a step back. I offer this scenario for your consideration to get behind what is this. I think you're all sensing intuitively what's a conflict, but why is it a conflict? Yes.
It's when something external outside of the board will impact a decision that you make. In
That
this case, it would be a relationship. It could be a job. It could be, my guess is it's probably mostly relationships.
right. The way I appreciate that observation to elaborate on that. I like the term external, you as board members are elected by the people to do the public's business. And so when you act as a board member, you're acting on behalf of the public unless you can't. And the can't is something you have to define for yourself. Does an affiliation, might be a friendship, it might be an antagonism. Does an external relationship or consideration affect my ability to do my job? And my job is to act on behalf of the public. And when I can't, because it's my babysitter and I don't want to expel her, or whatever the relationship is, then it's appropriate to say, I have a conflict of interest. And then the legal term is, then you recuse yourself from that particular decision. Who gets to decide if you have a conflict of interest? Only you. I've had this come up. Oh, Joe has a conflict and the board doesn't want him voting on this. Who gave Joe the power? The public through the election process. So only Joe can decide whether that relationship impairs his ability to act on behalf of the public. Yes, Karen?
So I know you're in this scenario, it's, two buddies chit-chatting and that's the question, but we do have a policy on conflict of interest. And I know conflict of interest is often defined by like a financial,
Yes.
benefit of something, but it's also, we have policies that you can't work for the district if you're on the Board of Education and things like that. So I assume those are separate. Those are very,
Those are
delineated.
black and white.
Yeah. So this is just in this scenario. I just wanted to make sure that was clear because
Yes.
it's, this is about, can you be impartial when it comes to somebody that you're friendly with versus what an
Correct.
actual legal
Yeah.
conflict would be, right?
Well, there's a law against
Yeah.
being employed by the board and serving on the board, but I can well imagine that you have a conflict of interest policy, and maybe through the town, where any financial benefit accruing to you or your family would cause you to have a conflict. And that is a per se conclusion that relationship makes it impossible for you to act impartially on behalf of the public. But back to the lights at the high school, that person is acting on behalf of the public because his perspective is that this is the public's good. So whether it's the PTO, whatever, you are who you are when you were elected, and you're free to have your opinions and exercise those opinions through your decision making. It's only when an external relationship affects your ability to act on behalf of the public that you have a cause to reflect on whether you have a conflict of interest. And so finally, when is it appropriate for a board member to call up the principal and say, what's the problem? Never is the right answer. Communication protocols are important, and I'm sure you have them. But the general premise is that the superintendent oversees the operations, the principals, the teachers. And so if you have a question, you go to the superintendent, and the superintendent answers the question or finds out and then answers the question. But it is, and this is where I think I have to differentiate between best practice and law. No one goes to jail if you call a principal, okay? It's not illegal. It's just not appropriate because, and there's an underlying rationale for that. And this goes to protocols. You act through a deliberative process. What that means is you can't like send the vote in, right? You come to a meeting, you listen to each other, you deliberate, and you make a decision. And so what information each of you has affects your ability to do your job as board members. So if a board member is on his or her own gathering information that is not accessible to the board as a whole, that affects the deliberative process. So for example, if a board member has a legitimate request for information, it's typically expected that the superintendent would share that information with all the board members so that you all have the same information so that you can all do your job appropriately. Well, I don't want to overstay my welcome. Yes, please. You have a question?
Sorry, I actually have a couple questions, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
My first question, which you just sort of touched on, you said, it's not against the law for us to call the principal, but obviously it's best practice. Could you go further and talk about our relationship as board members with both, whether it's other community groups, let's call it? I'm thinking the teachers union, the administrators union, the PTA council. I might be missing other groups. Feel free to jump in, but could you talk about, outside of acting as a liaison, right? Karen Hirsch is our PTAC liaison. So outside of that, our relationships with those groups.
I really appreciate the question because anything dealing with operations, and the unions are part of operations. We negotiate with the unions. And if an individual board member communicates with a union, the union's going to think that you're speaking on behalf of the board and you're not, right? Because you're just an individual. It's confusing. It can generate mixed messages. So I would draw a sharp distinction between anything dealing with unions and employment, working conditions, as something that is operational, and as you have the right to ask questions, you have the right to make motions, but it's the operational decision-making remains with the superintendent. But you mentioned other community groups and I just don't have the same conviction that that's a problem. I think, again, back to youth athletics or the PTO, you are who you are, you have your interests, you serve the public as you see fit. And so to have communications with other groups who are not employees of the district and subject to the supervision of the superintendent, I don't see as an issue or a concern, and I would defer to each of you in terms of how you want to operate as a board member in that regard. I just, anything dealing with unions, though, is a very different story, and I strongly argue against that.
Thank you. I had one more quick question, if nobody minds. Sorry. I'm making an assumption, so please clarify I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, when you speak about some of the FOIA things that you mentioned here, you referred primarily to email. Does email include WhatsApp and text as well?
It does.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you. That's, in the interest of time, I won't go through the whole texting at meetings and such. But in the materials that I've shared, it defines a public record as any recorded information related to the operation of the public agency. So, for example, we heard from one district that the board was on a group chat. And that's a per se violation of the Freedom of Information Law because you're communicating among a quorum outside of a post meeting. So yes, it involves text messages, WhatsApp. You know, I can't keep up with all the different opportunities. Insta. So anyway, thank you for that question. Any other questions? Well, again, it's my privilege to have the opportunity to support you where appropriate in the challenges you face, and I appreciate the chance to come here and talk with you personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Appreciate
I
it.
want to thank you and say that the board should read his column, which comes out, I think, is it on monthly in CABE?
Yeah, for 40 years, I've written "See You in Court." It's in the monthly CABE Journal.
It's just, I mean, these
And
are
it's about
5
the
great
Nutmeg
scenarios.
Board of
Yeah,
Education.
I think it's
Only 40
really
years?
helpful.
Only, right?
Just as long as you're not calling us Bombastic Bob or whatever, that's
Yeah,
his character's name.
Bob
Sorry.
Bombast. Right. Another favorite board member is Malcontent. So thank you again.
No, thanks, Tom. We actually did invite the public to join our board, private board Instagram account, but nobody wanted to see our pictures. I'd like to make a suggestion because we mentioned, speaking of public relations, we mentioned to a number of very interested people in the public about the pool that item would come up at 8 o'clock. So I'd like to suggest that I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to move the rest of item 1 here to the end of the meeting.
I can second that.
Okay. All in favor? Okay.
We didn't get a
Yes.
vote from Wendy.
Yes.
Okay. Karen? Okay. Karen. Okay. The motion passes 8-0. That's it. Then we're going to move on to before us as an action item this evening is the second reading of the ed specs for the pool, drive, and tennis court project. Someone want to make a motion to put this on the table? Sophie, you probably do.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to put the ed specs for the pool, Cardinal Drive and tennis courts to approve as presented.
Second,
Okay.
Cheney.
Sure. Okay. Tony or Ben, do you have some comments first?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ben.
I think we put the Q&A that we received in the front of the packet, and we have the architect Lisa Yates with us to answer any of your questions. But we're here to go through any document questions you have, and hopefully you have enough to take a vote tonight.
So with that said, we'll open up the questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Wendy.
I'm just wondering about the status of the public-private partnership fundraising efforts. How's that going?
We have heard no new additional information from when the time the board voted in December to have the resolution of support, but no one's come forward yet in support from a dollar perspective. We still hear people are interested in fundraising, but I do think you have to pick a project first before you start really getting into the fundraising.
Okay. I was under the impression that we were going to kind of see how the fundraising efforts went first, and then we were going to try to figure out we wanted to raise a substantial amount of money. So, we have no donors yet, not one. Okay. Thanks.
Karen? I see your hand there.
Me, Karen? or other
Karen
Karen?
Kraus. Sorry, Karen Kraus.
Okay, great. Sure. So I'm glad we have some experts here. So first of all, I did want to say I am supportive of the exit driveway. I do view that as a material safety and traffic issue that's been deferred for quite a while. However, I do have concerns about the natatorium as proposed. I think there's no question that the current pool has significant issues, but what I have repeatedly requested and not gotten a consistent answer to is what is truly the baseline requirements for a pool that meets the health and safety and functionality requirements versus what is nice to have. I have been told on the one hand that, despite the fact that the current proposal is roughly 3 times the current size, and our swim team is currently quite successful, that anything less than tripling the size would destroy the program from now until eternity. On the other hand, reading through the detailed specs from both December and more recently, the one we got just back in about a week ago, I see, the core aquatics area, which is 3 times as big, has a 35-meter pool rather than the 25-yard we have currently, and that I think is fairly common across Fairfield County. I see 1 diving board required, 2 preferred, a hot tub or warm-up pool is desired. I see an alumni room with 1,300 square feet, maybe 80 of which is an ADA bathroom. I see 8 tennis courts rather than the required 6. I'm actually seeing a lot of items. I'm sure there are others in here. A dry land training facility. So I'm seeing a lot of items in here which don't sound required, but I'm being told everything is required. And I'd just like to get a clear answer to that question.
Just trying to figure out where to begin on that one. That's
I just been, because I'd ask for and this is related to Wendy's question on the fundraising, because I think, in my opinion, a pool that certainly a safe pool that meets the needs of the students, I think, is completely appropriate for our taxpayers to fund. Where I'm struggling a bit is, when we start talking about a natatorium that has a lot of nice to have extras, that's where I think we start getting into the territory of hey, is that really fair to ask the taxpayers to fund these extras, or is that more appropriate for private fundraising from, say, the swim community that more directly benefits from those extras?
I
So,
can maybe,
you know,
yep, sorry.
thank you.
I can maybe start with a few building blocks. The first building block is that the diving program has been moved out of the existing pool area. And that's because of the size of the enclosing structure of the pool, which puts us into new pool territory, which is, that's a major cost driver, just the fact that you're doing a new pool. And then if you go into the other sports, a driver of the pool is if you put a water polo field in the pool that's 2 meters deep and you add shallow water to one end of it and you have 25-yard laps, you end up with the short course stretch pool.
For those of us who aren't serious swimmers, help me understand, and the public understand. I understand the depth. You can't have people diving and hitting their heads on the bottom. You can't have them hitting their heads on the roof. I don't think anyone's arguing that. Help me understand 35 meters versus 25 yards. Help me understand why we need a hot tub. Help me understand why we need an alumni room. Help me understand what is a dry land training facility and how that's different from the other gym facilities that we already have in the high school.
I think you can draw a line between what's absolutely necessary and things that you're pointing out, like the alumni room. I know that the dry land space requirement was a coach's request, a coaching request. It was more than one coach. But I also think that a big part of this is looking at the building holistically, because you're making an investment. You're not gonna build an Olympic-sized pool or really let it get out of hand. But there wasn't a sense that, you're making an investment. Are you gonna stop short at the last 5 or 10% and have something that is not working for the next few generations?
Lisa, could you
And I
pull up
started,
the slide deck?
go ahead. Yeah,
Could you pull
sure.
up the slide deck that we used for first read? I think it'll maybe help us to ground our conversation and the floor,
Absolutely.
the ground level.
And I'm gonna pull it up in PDF format because it's a little less formal. So,
And again, I'm not saying we can't have a single extra, but we should, for transparency, make an informed decision of what is
Well, let's see if
truly required to
Right.
conduct a program.
I hear. So
Right,
let's see if our experts here can answer some of your questions.
right. So I'm gonna zoom in on option 1. And this is one of the sort of more basic options that we looked at with a smaller pool and working within the existing, and we had to pull the diving well out. The cost for this is probably less than option 4, but the utility is, sort of magnitudes less. But if you look at, the amount of water that's here and the amount of water that's here, it's, we're getting a little bit closer.
So
else
why
can
is
I
the
take us?
why
What
is
does that mean
the
in concrete terms? So more water. That mean, what does that?
Money, that's where I'm going with that. If you look at the size of the pool and the size of the pool. Because
Okay,
I think this is a fundamentally, right? It's a question about scope and expense, correct?
I'm trying to understand what I'm trying to, and maybe I'm not being clear enough. I'm trying to understand what must we absolutely provide, or we cannot have a safe and functional swim, dive, and water polo program, versus what are things that would be really neat to have, but we could still function without them. So for example,
Karen, can I speak, please? Karen Kraus, sorry, I don't know if you can.
Yes.
Thank you. So I just want to recap for the public. We started meeting about this in March of 2025. There were 14 meetings of the feasibility committee, and there were 6 focus groups. So a tremendous amount of time has been spent by many extremely serious swimmers, coaches who have spent decades of their lives on this sport. And that is how these educational specifications were developed. I mean, I think we can try to answer some of your questions, Karen, but also many of those questions were answered in the 14 meetings and during the 6 focus groups. This is the type of facility that is being built today at high schools that have the types of programs that we have. And I want to go back to Wendy's comment about there isn't private fundraising for this, committed for this pool yet. It's really hard to raise private funds saying, we have no idea what this pool is going to be. It may be a bare bones facility with nothing. I don't think you're getting any private fundraising for that. So part of what we talked about is developing a facility that might actually attract some private fundraising, because it would really be a celebration of the legacy of this program and set up this program to continue to be successful for another 60 plus years. What you're talking about of stripping it down to a bare bones program, I don't think it would attract a single dollar of private fundraising if we do the absolute bare minimum. So, you know, I can promise you that. I know that because I went to the 14 meetings and I went to the focus groups. People want to have a facility that they're proud of. And I think in Greenwich, we can do that. That's what the public wants. We had hundreds and hundreds of people come out and talk about this facility, and that is how we arrived at this plan.
Sophie, to correct the record, I did not say the public should donate for a bare bones facility. I was saying I think it's fair for the taxpayers to fund a functional facility. And then I think it's also fair to look to private donations for the additional above and beyond to make it.
I think that's a real paradigm shift for the way that we fund our capital projects in the town generally. So for example, like we haven't looked at that with Old Greenwich School. We haven't looked at Riverside School, where we're saying, okay, we're only going to meet the absolute bare minimum of what is code.
Well,
that's not how we've done it. And then do private fundraising for the remainder to say, if you want to have any other facilities in your school, you're going to have to go for private fundraising. I mean, that's a tremendous paradigm shift. And I would be shocked if the public would be supportive of doing that with all of our capital projects in Greenwich.
Well, I think there's
I'm just looking for an honest answer.
No,
I've asked the question several times. I'm not getting an answer to my question. I just want transparency so we can make an informed decision.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I think there is actually, and middle ground's probably the wrong way to speak here. But the way we have to fund a project, is identifying the proposal that we want to see built. Fundraising around that, then, so we can't fund a bare bones project and then fundraise and then come back and say, I actually want this. But what we could do, and it's not at our level, but I think it makes sense for the BET to do it, is probably to put some conditions, say, if we approve this project, they put some funding conditions around this. We want to see this amount of money raised privately. I mean, that's probably at the BET level, but we'd have to fund the one that, to your point, first we fund the one that we want to see built, which is probably the one with some of these things that people have recommended.
Yeah, and I just want to add the BET has already built this into their budget to fund the pool the way that it is being presented tonight, including this next first phase. But also I wanted to add in terms of like 25 yards versus 35 yards, like the stretch pool, that also really serves our entire community because that is a shallow end and that could be used by our other programs like Unified Sports. It could also be used by Special Olympics. It could be used just by disabled students, people there would be a nice public use for it. Right now, our pool is not really accessible to the public because it is in such disrepair, but there certainly is a model for going forward. If we have a brand new facility that meets all of the code and is safe, that there would be opportunities for the public to use it, and having that sort of stretch model would make it much more usable, for example, for families who want to go on a Sunday and teach their kids how to swim and have swim lessons. So this is a more community-friendly design as opposed to one that is exclusively built only for high school programs. And the high school programs require the 25-meter with the, deep for the water polo. So you would be, if you build sort of the bare bones, you're really eliminating a lot of the public use that could be really interesting. And there certainly are facilities. I know, for example, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where I grew up, the public high school swimming pool there also has a tremendous amount of public use for masters swimming, for swim lessons, and even for other club teams use that pool because it's designed appropriately for that community use.
Okay, and I see, Bob, I see your hand here, so I promise we're coming here. But while we're on this 25-35 point, because to Karen's question about needs to have and nice to have, and I didn't follow that myself. Would you go through that reasoning again? Why we think why the 35 is necessary?
So I had this section open, so we could look at this in terms of the depth. So if you can see here where we're getting a little steeper, this is the 2-meter depth. So this is the requirement for water polo, which, I mean, they were playing water polo in the existing pool, but I don't think it was exactly to specification. But the shallow end over here, this is actually needed for the curriculum, right? So this is where you have lifeguarding classes and actual swim classes for the students. I wanted to sort of add that on to Sophie was talking about the shallow end. But this distance from here to here is accommodating the water polo.
Okay, so the 25 meters at the appropriate depth so that we can play water polo. And then the additional 10 meters is basically the shallow end, so you can have curriculum components like lifeguarding classes. And we do still have a lot of high school swim classes that it's not mandate, but we still have those curriculum classes. So that's so that you can have the shallow end we have there. So that's how you get to 35.
Right, and right.
And
And
unified
you can
sports.
swim laps there as well in the shallow
Okay.
end.
Great. Go ahead, Bob.
I just wanted to say that I wanted to iterate what Lisa Yates had said earlier to not stop at 95 or 90% of the project. I don't think that the alumni room or the hot tub are going to be the driving financial force behind this. I think it's the pool itself.
Paul.
I want to reiterate what Karen Kraus was talking about, and I don't know why this is a surprise. We asked for this. Karen brought it up. We originally, when they brought us the different pool options, there was like, it started with the gold and went all the way to diamond and platinum. There was no baseline for us to make an understanding of what the of what the minimum standards would meet for educational purposes at Greenwich High School. And obviously the committees went back and brought us the A version, which was the build it in place. We were able to come down from $80 million. But Bob, I don't think it's the hot tub that's going to do it, but I do think it's the hot tub and the alumni and the foyer and the additional seating and I mean there's quite a bit of and does that we should at least be able to look at by line item and understand what it is we're going to be asking for private partners to raise. I also think that once we agree to the ed specs, we're agreeing to the scope and size of this thing. And so we're kind of stuck with that. And we're stuck with potentially, this huge tax burden. And quite frankly, I've been in Greenwich my whole life. I don't remember ever swimming in the high school pool. Maybe I missed it. I would go somewhere else. But I know that we have a difficult time getting public use of, the football stadiums because the janitor needs to open the bathroom. What are going to be the limitations, and are we going to have built into this agreement, that these limitations aren't going to effect and we build this thing and find out that nobody can use it, similar to the Performance Arts Center, which we can't use the Performance Arts Center if there's a, wiffle ball game going on. There's something else going on. We build this huge thing and we can't access it.
And I do want to say, I mean, Ben oversees the facility rentals, but our facilities are used all the time, outside, inside. The only thing that's really regulated, and it was back when it was built, is the PAC. And Dad had that agreement, and it had more to do, well, that is me, Seth, yeah. And that had more to do with just, parking on the campus. One of the reasons we want to get this driveway done, because all of that traffic was going down Hillside. We've heard that complaint for years. So, I think this project, it's really important to say, that's why we had 15 different iterations. It's gone through a lot, and it is not like a big fancy pool. We've gone through all those discussions. It's really providing what we need. And, we used to be able to use the pool, for instance, like Community Connections. We should be doing a lot more programming, but right now we can't really have, some of our students in that pool for safety reasons. And we can do OT and PT and all kinds of wonderful things. Other communities do that. We don't have that ability right now. So again, I just want to reiterate, that's why this has been months and months and months, over a year of really getting feedback from everybody to make sure it's the right project. And I mean, I think we were all happy that we went with option A, because we think that is the right thing to do for the community, not where we were at option B. And I think we've heard overwhelmingly from many in our community that agree with that.
Go ahead, Veronica.
Karen Kraus, I totally understood your question, and have no qualifications like Lisa or Ben, but my guess to answer your question is that the basic bare bones version is a pool with a diving board that is deep enough and long enough, and an ADA compliant outside deck, I think it's called. I'm not a swimmer, and I understand your concerns tremendously. I have no swimmers in my family. I personally am not even a great swimmer, but I really, really, really want this for our community. I want this for our kids. I want this for our athletes. I want this for our school. I want this to be something that we're proud of. And I think it's an opportunity for us to be thoughtful and create something amazing and excellent. And I understand when I hear about the dry land area, I guarantee, and Dr. Jones, please tell me if I'm wrong, but I guarantee other sports, other athletes, other students are going to take advantage of this space in ways that we cannot even imagine right now. And our kids deserve this, the students who swim deserve this, and the whole community deserves this project.
So, well, I can sort of continue on that front. I'm not a swimmer, nor do I pretend to be one. I'm married to one. And I know when we first started looking at stuff, I was asking him, for specific details as to like what it is that they look for in pools. And a lot of this is very similar to what was done at the YMCA when they rebuilt their natatorium, and that is used by youth swim teams, adult swim teams, triathlon, diving programs, every program. And we want to be able to have something that we can, unlike the track at the high school, which was built a little too short, so we can't participate in, SEAC competition. We can't host them. We want to be able to host those things. We want to, and I think to me, yeah, it's really expensive. And if there are things that we can look to figure out if it's needed or not, like the alumni room, that's one thing. But you don't want to have a pool without access for people to come watch and support their swimmers, their divers, and whatever. And the fact that we're going to look to create something, I think that the public will, have access to rent that space, I think is the first time we've ever looked to do that. I think that's fantastic. But the other question I had was, because we were talking about the significance in size difference. It's my understanding that it's not necessarily, footage on the ground. It's also upward. That's why it's so much bigger, right? It's because we need all the added height. So it's not necessarily that we're building something so humongous. It's that we need that air, the height for the diving program and a secondary maybe level of viewing, and it would match pretty much the size and height of the current building, correct?
Correct. And the alumni room is just that, it's built over lobby space
Right.
and the existing toilet rooms.
Okay, so let me clarify that because I think a couple people have mentioned that, and that was based on the Q&A. That was a question I had too. So I go back to the CMS, which is, we said this last time, but this is definitely now our last meeting in CMS. But when we passed those ed specs, there was a lot of back and forth and looking at different ways to contain what was then the biggest capital expenditure in the town history, still is. And we went and we said, well, you know what, we can probably eliminate this room and eliminate this square footage and that square footage, and we can save some money here. And is this room really necessary? Maybe not. So I don't want to put words in Karen Krause's mouth, but I didn't hear her say she was against the pool. I think she was more saying, are there are there questions around the edges here? And I heard a number of people mention the alumni room. So just based on what you just said there, because this is not I want to make sure I understand here. So eliminating things like the alumni room, these additional offices, and things of that nature, that doesn't curtail costs of the project because of the square footage of the pool, and you're going up layers in the footprint, levels in the footprint, or in the lobby and things, or
Oh,
is there
there's no
cost
doubt.
savings there?
Yeah, sorry. There's no doubt that it would, save a little bit of money, but I don't know that it's, for instance, I'll start with the alumni room, assuming that the upper tier, the dry, safe spectator seating remains. If this space is eliminated, you don't have to condition it, you don't have to pay to condition it, you don't have to buy the finishes. You still have to build the same amount of perimeter wall on the second floor, and you still have to build the same amount of roof. It'll just be lower. So there is a cost savings, but there's also, I call it the bang for the buck factor. We would call this a value engineering item, and it would save you money, but it wouldn't be big dollars.
It's not
going.
right. It's
Mhm.
not like, just to make sure I'm clear. So say we're $1,000 a square foot. We're not taking the footage of the alumni room and deleting that from the project.
Or at $1,000 per square foot, this deletion might not get you that $1,000 per square foot in deletion. I think that's a fair statement. And then I'll look at the offices under here. Reduction of the offices would make sense with reduction of the seating above, which is possible. The seating is the way it's laid out. I think it could be, it's a little bit on the generous side, but that we expected to happen during design, that this would get tightened up and the seats would be counted exactly, and we would make sure we didn't have more than you needed. And then, I fully anticipate that if this project, moves forward into design, that it's going to be watched for value at every step. There could, then be the potential to make these spaces smaller. But it's, that's a tightening. And and working with the committee over the last year, and I do a lot of feasibility studies, I firmly believe in value engineering. I tend to, not think that feasibility is the time to do it, because then you end up not being able to have the flexibility to, when you're in the next phase.
Okay. So I just want to make a couple points.
Wendy's had her hand up for like 20 minutes and no one's called on her.
Thank you very much, Karen. I don't think, I just want to say nobody is advocating for a bare bones pool. And there's no question that Greenwich High School needs and deserves a high quality swimming facility. And I like other parts of the plan, like the emergency access and new tennis courts. And thank you for explaining why the pool is so big. I'm not sure that I I just don't think that we need a pool this big. We're a public high school, not a private school. We're not a university, and this seems like something that you would see at a university or that a private school would fund. And I don't think it's fair for taxpayers to have to share in the brunt of this when, only 150 to 200 people swim. I know we want to use it for the community. I have my doubts that that is actually going to happen. As we saw with the stadium, we can't open those bathrooms on the weekends, right? If it's like GYFL, like there are all sorts of issues that you deal with unions working with each other. So Parks and Rec working with the Board of Ed, and getting back to the donation part, when the project was first proposed, vocal supporters led us to believe that private money would be the cornerstone of this plan. Mr. Waters stated that this project is perfect for public-private partnership. And even our board chair stated on the record that he would not support a project in this price range without significant donations. And, here we are, and it looks like this is falling on our taxpayers without any private funding at all. It hasn't even begun yet, which is concerning to me. And for for all the people in our town who, aren't swimmers and will never use the pool. But their taxes will definitely be going up because of it and all of our other capital projects. So I think, it's a lot of money.
Okay, so I was going to make a few points. My first point is that we have only received emails from the public in support of this project. In anticipation of tonight. I went through my board emails. All of the emails have come in, have supported doing this project. No one has written in and said, I would like to see a stripped down version of the pool with a bare minimum. I haven't seen a single email about that. So I'm not sure where this sentiment is coming from, but we're serving to represent the public, and the public has been overwhelming in saying that they want to see this new pool and they want to see it in the ed specs as presented. I also wanted to remind everybody that the pool is in incredibly bad, unsafe condition right now and could fail at any time. So for us to kind of talk about, well, maybe we could shrink it down slightly by 2% or something, and we're not changing the pool. I think that's been pretty clear with the way that it was just described. I appreciate, Wendy, you were saying you're not a swimmer and this isn't your area of expertise. I would say, I'm not a hockey player. I don't know anything about hockey. I wouldn't have gone to the meetings about hockey and said, couldn't we build a slightly smaller hockey rink? I assume that they have spec'd it out the way that it needs to be spec'd out in order for it to be safe and comply with code. And I think that's what we have here with this swimming pool. So, when we're delaying, we're really putting our students and the programs at risk because the pool could fail at any time. And if we're concerned about cost, when we delay, construction costs go up by 3 to 5% a year. That's a conservative estimate. So if we delay by 6 months or a year, first of all, the construction costs are going up. Second of all, if the pool fails, we have the cost of renting a facility to accommodate our programs while we're building a new pool. So all of this feels very penny wise, pound foolish to be talking about at this very, very early phase of how can we cost engineer this to make it slightly less expensive. I also wanted to say that at graduation, it was really interesting that we had John Sullivan come back as a football player, and we're all celebrating his tremendous athletic career. We're so proud of him. And somebody mentioned, I believe it was Dr. Jones, that 40 of our graduates this year are recruited Division I athletes. I did an informal poll this weekend, and 14 of the 40 Division I athletes are from our aquatics program. So if we want to put that program at risk, I don't understand that. Why would we compromise truly, in terms of a productive athletic facility? the pool is a truly productive athletic facility in terms of raising the profile of our town. And we had several individuals write in and say that they specifically moved to Greenwich to participate in the swim and water polo programs. So, I mean, this is urgent. This is an incredible program. We want to build it for the next 50 years. There's plenty of opportunities, as Lisa Yates mentioned. If we want to think about how to make it slightly less expensive over time, we can do that. I think this was really, really thoughtful. I sat in on all of those meetings. A lot of them are recorded. If any of the board members have more questions, I would suggest like pulling up all of those meetings and watching them, because many of their questions were answered in those meetings. And I appreciate that we have the disadvantage of changeover of board membership in the midst of this project. And I think that makes it really challenging for people to get up to speed on these big capital projects in general. But we did have many, many conversations about this. And I think this is an incredibly deliberative process. And the educational specifications serve our aquatics community. And our community has been extremely outspoken in saying that this is what they want us to do.
Karen, I see your hand. Kraus.
Yes, a few people have mentioned community use. I just wanted to get a little more specific on that. I think Sophie maybe mentioned Sundays. Are there guaranteed, which periods would this be open to the community? Is it open to the community all summer? Is it every Sunday? I just want to get a better sense of how much community use would we get out of this?
Well, the way that community use works for all of our facilities, and this is, fields, it's gyms all across the district, they're used all the time. The first right of use, obviously, is our students because they are schools. And then it goes to Park and Rec, and then it goes to community use. And, we've had big conversations even with the YMCA, who has huge interest, in when they host tournaments, for instance, at the YMCA, they have to tell all of their adult swim folks that they can't swim that weekend. And so we do believe we have partnership opportunities, again, just like we do in every facility across the district.
Sorry to clarify, I'm not asking about the process or the waterfall. I'm curious about how many hours. Is this hey, 2 to 3% of the time? Is this 30% of the time? Is it 50% of the time? I'm just trying to get an order of magnitude. Is this occasional community use, but 98% of the time it's really these 100 to 200 students in the aquatics program? Or is this, hey, 20% of the time or all summer, this is open to the community? Because I think that's an important factor. And I haven't been able to get an answer to that.
I don't think it's hard to talk about a facility that doesn't exist. Once it exists, you look at what that use can be. For instance, right now we're doing very, very little other than like lifeguarding, things like that for school use during the day. We have huge opportunity for electives for our students for the pool to actually be utilized in a much more effective way. We've had conversations about even the 4th grade aquatics program that we started that we have to host at the Y right now. Could we actually be having our 4th grade aquatics happen in our own pool at the high school? Like there's I think the use is unlimited by our creativity and what we can offer our community and our students.
But the use is totally limited, because certainly during the school day and in the afternoons when the swim team is practicing, that's out. What I'm trying to understand is what are the times that the students aren't using the pool?
Well, even during the day, depending on our programming, Karen, it depends on what we offer for high school classes, what we could offer for, a 4th grade aquatics program. So it depends on how we build our actual master schedule at the high school during the day. If the swim team is using the pool, we wouldn't have community in there at the same time. But every other facility, again, is the same. When our high school basketball girls team or boys are practicing, we don't have community use in there on the top of them. But again, that's how all of our facilities operate.
I recognize that, which is why I'm asking the question, because I don't know what the swim utilization schedule is, and I'm trying to understand. It sounds like we would not have random, Greenwich residents from the community, adults on campus while school is in session, right? We don't do that. So I'm trying to understand when in general is the pool not in use? So for example, do we have programs in the summer, or could the community count on it for the summer?
I would have to check all of our records. The problem is we haven't rented the facility in well over a year and a half because of the deficiencies. But in the going off of memory, in the past, the YW, the YM, certainly were utilizing the pool in those off hours. But we'll have to go through all the records to see what a historical use looked like.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand like a general resident, though not a member, because the YW and the YM are membership organizations. I was curious more about the general public. So for example, on the weekends, I could walk onto the Central Middle School tennis courts and play tennis with my kids as a general member of the taxpaying public of Greenwich. I was curious if there's
You
an
cannot
equivalent.
do that as a
cannot
general
do that.
taxpayer in a facility. You would need a nonprofit organization that is sponsoring the use or the rental, and then you're going to sign up through them. So we don't have a building where just the public
Got it.
can walk in and use the gymnasium. We do have a building with the gymnasium where somebody from a nonprofit or the Parks and Rec would offer programming, which you would then go through. But even the tennis courts, there's a sign up procedure with Parks and Rec. But if it's not being
Yeah,
utilized,
okay.
or basketball courts, outdoors is different than indoor facility.
Okay, thank you. That's the clarification I was looking for. I appreciate that.
Cool. Yeah, I think it sounds like, Ben, there's undoubtedly, and I know I've heard from a number of people talking to community groups, there's undoubtedly a lot of interest where this could be a revenue generator down the line. Okay, so it sounds like let's try to land the plane here. I want to clarify because I did say, and as Wendy mentioned, and I was sincere. Look, this is not a inexpensive project. It is probably one of the largest projects we've ever authorized. So it is perfectly appropriate that we're having this conversation. Nor do I think that I've heard anybody say anything around, there's a couple paper tigers going on about not going to bare bones or things like that. I don't think that's where anybody is. I will say that given the cost of it, and I reiterate that I do believe strongly that this is something when it comes time to fund the full project, it should be very much a public-private partnership. I don't think that is at our level. I think that comes at the next step of the BET. They're the money people. They're in charge of funding it, but I don't think anyone, given the budget constraints that we have across town, and the very real other capital concerns that we have that are more related directly to our core mission, as wonderful as our aquatics program is. And how central it is to so many families in the school. Should we be funding that over making sure all of every school in the district is ADA compliant and the other things? No, that's why this has to be a public-private partnership. I think we'll get there. I think that's a different conversation than approving this project today. Personally, I had some concerns coming in here around a number of around the periphery of the project, things like the alumni room and PE and the size of the pool and things. I think this conversation was productive in getting to the answer into a lot of these, and doesn't sound like there's a lot of realized space at that level, although there does sound like there is some value engineering that can come down the pike. Paul, you've been waving at me, so go ahead. Then we'll call the question.
Yeah, I don't remember it all, but I think Karen answered one of it. I was just wondering how many students were involved in the program. It sounds like 200 on the high side. I also wanted to ask a question. I think the last time we met wasn't too long ago. We heard more of the need to move this along quickly so that it could get built and we'd have as little downtime as possible. But I think in the ed specs that we still have, we have construction funding deadlines of May of 2027 and building committee targets of September of 2026. Have those been changed? They just haven't been updated in the ed specs, and I'm not done yet, but you can answer that.
So that's why it's on the agenda this evening, so that in order to make the September 26 building committee, that would be the moving backwards. So the RTM would approve that at their September meeting. In order to make that call, the Board of Selectmen and the first selectman would have to interview candidates over the summer and nominate them for that call. So that's why, and they can't do that until there's an ed spec project. So that backs us up to here. That's where we've got there. If our conversation was to go, this is what we experienced with Riverside. If our conversation was to go till the fall, then you've probably got a months-long vetting process to identify candidates. Even if the first selectman worked really hard, you're now looking at what? The November call, the December call, and now you've got real construction challenges. So that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful. I just wanted to make a suggestion. Maybe the ticket office can go, because the ticket office at the Greenwich High School football thing doesn't get used at all. Apparently, we don't get the money for that. So I do think there are some things in here that are just like no brainers, and they're still in here. So we haven't fully done this. There's a lobby trophy case and another trophy case in the alumni room. I'm just going to reiterate, I think there's some fat that can be trimmed. And if you want extra space, that ticket office is going to be, perfect for you, because it's just a dead building over there at the football stadium.
I think I just heard Mr. Cheney kind of request a roll call vote. I think that's perfectly appropriate. All right. So the motion on the table is to approve the ed specs as presented. There's a lot of conversation, but I didn't hear any proposed amendments. Hearing none, we will call the question. So, Madam Secretary, can you
Sorry, Mike, could I make a motion?
You can make an amendment.
All right, this may not, I don't know if this is,
Give it a shot. We've got a guy in the ceiling that comes out and helps you.
we get the guy in the ceiling, yeah. I'd like to make a motion to approve the exit driveway on a separate basis.
I'll second that.
You'd have to, I don't want to speak on behalf of the man in the ceiling. But I think you would have to make a motion to separate the project into its contingent part.
I'd like to make a motion to separate the proposal into its component parts.
I
And vote
would
them
defer to maybe Mr. Brannigan on this, because it would fundamentally change the ed specs. They'd only be partially approving the ed specs. Is that correct?
Yes, I see this similar to the pre-K adjustment that was made to Riverside. So we had the full ed specs presented to the board, and then they were removed a component. I understand where we're heading. We have 3 votes. Then you're going to be voting for tennis courts, driveway, and the natatorium. We would then have to make 3 separate ed specs if one did not prevail.
So, right. So, Michael, I don't know if you can help us. Is if this motion to amend is in legal order here. I think what Karen's trying to do is amend it to have 3 separate votes on the 3 components of the project. Yeah.
I think what Karen is asking is a motion to amend the ed specs as presented to remove the swimming pool in its entirety. That is because you want to do the driveway and the tennis courts?
The driveway is my primary concern, given the immediate safety and traffic considerations. I think the pool needs a little refining.
So I
Okay,
could make that motion.
But my motion is on the table, and she is making a motion to amend my motion. So we have to vote on her motion to amend my motion by removing the swimming pool and the tennis courts entirely.
Right. That's the amendment you could make. Motion to amend you could
Yes.
make.
Yeah.
But are we still in discussion from the other thing? Because there's a lot of discussion going on now.
No, I think.
And I don't think there should be. But
We're-
if there's
yeah.
going to be, I have things to add. Are we?
I think we're saying that this is the fun part of the conversation where we figure out what we can and can't do. No, so I think I think there is now an motion to amend on the table.
Motion?
That has not been seconded yet. With the motion to amend Sophie's original motion, is to remove the pool and the tennis courts, from, and so that the vote is simply on the road.
So if I second that, then discussion becomes open. So
Exactly.
I second that, and then I'd like to make sure my hand is raised.
Okay, so discussion is on the amended.
Okay, may I? Okay, so I think, and I think I concur here with Karen that the road is something that I think is necessary. Although I don't think, Karen, this is what I wanted to share with you. I don't think it's as timely. Like we're not trying to get this done in literally, by the end of tonight to make another deadline, I also think that
Okay.
one of the other things might be that the inconvenience that we may put in the middle of this is we might have to have another meeting is what that comes down to. So maybe if we are, a board here committed to having another meeting, I still would want to know why there's 8 tennis courts instead of 6. So I haven't had that conversation because we're so focused on the pool right now. Anyway, that's my discussion as it relates to that, Karen. I concur with you. If this goes down that road, I would probably vote with you, but I think that that there's more to be said here. I think that maybe they'll finally get you your bare bones, version of this so that we can start
I'm
adding.
not asking for bare bones. Do not listen
No,
to
no,
Sophie
no,
putting
no.
words in my mouth.
Whatever it is,
I never
we're-
said I was advocating for
Okay.
bare bones.
Ben, I see your hand. Are you part of this discussion, or is that your hand up from before?
Yeah, I just wanted the 8 versus 6. 8 courts are what we currently have. 6 is what was potentially the minimum we could go to, but the option before you now is maintaining what you have.
Thank you. I'm okay with what we have. I thought we had 6.
Okay, so any other comments on the amendment? Having none, we will call, so yes. Ron.
Just had a question, for clarification purposes. If we separate these into 3 different projects, do we need 3 different building committees?
Mhm.
I would like to withdraw my motion to amend. Too much.
Okay,
Can I would need some help with this, a motion to amend to table this. If that's motion to table it, I don't know if I can do that in the middle of another motion. But you get my point, right? Like we all want to get this done and we know there's a timeline for it. And
Yes.
if we're pressured to do something.
hold on. Okay, so the motion is to table. No, she withdrew the amended motion. The motion is to table the original motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We need discussion. Okay, Madam Secretary. Oh, yes, Veronica.
Why are we tabling this? And if we do table this, when would we be like, I don't understand, because then we're going to have another meeting like next week. Lisa's going to have to redo all the work, which is, oh, sorry, Lisa, it's fine. And then we're going to have this conversation all over again. I don't know what the difference really in financial cost would be. I'm concerned why and when.
We have had some people reach out to us and say that only, this has only been out in the public domain for 11 days.
This has been
As
in the
presented.
public domain for
Presented.
like,
All right, folks, let's
okay, but
let's try to maintain procedure here. Paul?
Discussion, I wanted to respond to Veronica. So I think the motion to table, the purpose for it is because I see this tanking and I don't want it to tank. So but I don't know that for sure. So I'm trying to protect it. I'm trying to protect it in a way that some of these really extravagant things, Lisa could pull out in a week or so, and we could get back here together and potentially, look at that. But there's a lot of stuff here that I don't want to torpedo it tonight. That's why I'm tabling it.
Lisa, I saw you shake your head, probably subconsciously around, are there things you would, remove from the pool, given this discussion, if we were to table?
So, it's Greenwich's natatorium and tennis courts and driveway. We will do what we're directed to do. I don't know that I can get you a revised package with some undefined number of value engineering and revised pricing in a week. That's not something I mean, it takes me 2.5 weeks to get the cost estimator online. And these buildings, they're not like a Chinese menu, right? You're pricing a structural frame for a building of a certain size, and then it has those items in it. So it's not just like, hey, we'll pull out the second floor. Because I am sort of hearing the beginnings of that. It's certainly something we can do. It's probably not by next week.
More appropriate would be, what would be an appropriate time frame?
It depends on what I'm directed to do. So
Considering
we
you-
were,
right.
I was, when we were having the discussion, I was showing a few different things. I was showing our earlier options that we worked on that weren't necessarily priced, that had a smaller pool. And then, this sort of built into the pool size that we have, which was largely agreed upon, in part because the smaller pools required us when we were reusing the existing pool, we had to raise the entire deck of the pool and then ramp down into the locker rooms. But if we're talking about something simple, relatively simple, like you keep the pool and you delete the upper level, I would say I could probably get pricing in a month or two. Because I would have to draw it first and redo the specs and get it priced again.
Okay, so that's what I figured. So thank you. So to clarify, to revise the ed specs, to do something like, remove the second floor, which to be clear, I didn't hear, I heard, I did not hear consensus from the board around, but some people kind of moving in that direction at best. That would probably be at least a 2-month process, a 1 to 2 month process, which would probably then delay the building committee because of the nominating process. And then we're looking at October, November. Is that fair to say, Lisa?
Yeah, that's fair to say. And I was picking that option not because I heard it, but
Right.
because,
But that's
that's
a
an
good
example of a concrete direction for me to take.
Okay. All right. So at the same time, I also heard a lot of potential, should this pass tonight as is, a lot of potential down the line for value engineering that did not shortchange the time, did not damage the time frame, kept the project moving. We'll continue to do some value engineering, certainly continue doing fundraising, so that on those two fronts, the overall cost of the project to the town, or at least to the taxpayers, can be defrayed while the project continues to move forward. Is that also fair to say?
Is it a question for me?
Sure.
Yeah, I think I was, while you were talking, I was trying to think of the action that you would take that would indicate to the BET and to whatever design team you have moving forward that you would, like to see some kind of a cap on the price or some kind of condition on, if you don't get X amount of public funding, then, reduce it by some percentage, the overall price. That's the kind of place that would happen in the, when you're working in design in a more detailed way. I think also, this is backing off a little bit, we show these really detailed designs when we're in the feasibility stage, and they look real and they feel real, but this is, you know, a test fit around a concept. And yeah, I'm working on Julian Curtis. I see educational specifications where, by the dictates of the budget, we're enacting portions of them in the most intelligent way that we can. So I could see, you know, I could see that potentially happening.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful what you're saying, Lisa, because that's really the role for the BET and the RTM, frankly, that if they get to decide how much money they're willing to fund this pool. And so I don't think that's, you know, I think we should let them do their jobs.
So here's my suggestion, and then we'll call the question. Should the gentleman at the end of the table be interested in, yeah, Paul, sorry, in withdrawing your motion, I'd like to make an amendment around similar to what Lisa was saying, saying that is the like I have to think of the wording here, but the board passes the budget this as presented with the express interest of seeing both value engineering and private funding at later aspects of the project. But you'd have to remove that, and that way we can keep the ball rolling.
I will keep the ball rolling. I remove my motion to table.
I appreciate it. And now I'll get all the blame for it. So, no problem. Okay. So I would like to make a motion to amend. All right, we're back to the original motion. I would like to make a motion to amend Sophie's original motion to include to pass the we're passing the ed specs as presented with a sense of the meeting of the board that we are interested in pursuing value engineering and private fundraising to defray the overall cost and scope of the project. How's that sound?
All right,
Can you
repeat it?
Of course I can. Maybe. Approve the ed specs as presented, along with a sense of the meeting, along with the board's sense of the meeting, in support of.
You said interested in value engineering and fundraising.
And fundraising, yeah, and private fundraising to defray the overall cost and scope of the project.
Sorry. So I'm just wondering if procedurally it would be more appropriate to vote on the ed specs as presented. And then if you would like to do a sense of a meeting for the board to say that they support, as you said, private engineering and private fundraising and cost engineering, for example, at schematic design and further stages, that we could do it that way. Because otherwise I think it's confusing to me that the ed specs would have this other language, because I don't know how that's actionable.
I'm fine. I'm fine with withdrawing my amendment if you promise to vote for it. Sense to me.
So can we call the question on
Okay.
voting on the ed specs as presented?
Okay.
The original motion is back on the table.
That is fine. Madam Secretary, we're going to do a roll call vote then.
Okay.
One of two votes.
Yes. Okay. Paul,
No.
Veronica,
Yes.
Sophie,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Karen Hirsch,
Yes.
Wendy Walsh,
No.
and Karen Kraus. No. So the vote passes 5-3.
Okay. All right. I would like to make a motion of the sense of the meeting. So like I just said here, a motion to approve a sense of the meeting, encouraging both the value engineering and further value engineering and private fundraising to defray the overall cost and scope of the project.
I'll second.
Thank you, Bob. Discussion. Okay. Oh, hi, Karen.
I just wanted to make it clear, for those who may not know, like for the sense of the meeting, it's just our thoughts that we're just documenting but if we don't reach a certain point in fundraising, we don't the project will still be moving forward, but we would certainly like to have public-private partnership if and where we can.
Yes, I believe that's correct. This means absolutely nothing.
Well, it's we believe strongly in it. But yes, as I've said before, I think it's the BET's role around putting contingencies.
So I think I'm going to take this as an opportunity to talk about that the type of pool you build is going to dictate how successful you might be with your private fundraising. So I think, I'm not opposed to this idea, but if we cost engineer the pool into a pool that no one is excited about, if we cut certain things that were suggested, like I'll give an example because people kind of derisively referred to the hot tub, right? Hot tubs are used for divers. It's part of like in between dives. It's a very standard thing. Anyone who's watched the Olympics, you see the divers, they go and dive and then they sit in the hot tub and then they get back on the diving board. It's not like people are sitting around, having a relaxing time and having a snack in a hot tub. It's for the divers, right? So if someone said, oh, like, let's get rid of these fancy things, obviously we've approved the ed specs, but I'm saying if we said like, get rid of the alumni pool or make it really tiny or something like that, I think that's going to really hurt our private fundraising. So I just want to be clear on our messaging to the community that we're really excited about this pool and we want it to be a great pool. I am supportive, obviously, always with every capital project that we want to be smart about it, which is why I'm excited we're pushing forward because the faster we do it and the more that we are coordinating all three projects, the most cost efficient it will be.
Ben?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that in the town charter under powers and duties of the building committee, the Board of Ed's going to see this project two more times. The first time is before an architect is selected, as you just did for Riverside. But the one that you will see is it says no document shall be issued for bidding unless until the final plans and specifications have been submitted to and approved by the Board of Ed. So before the pool is even put out to bid, the Board of Ed is going to have an opportunity to take a look at it. So this concept of value engineering and the like, all these adjustments that we're seeing from this concept stage to final, you're going to see what that looks like. So there's more opportunities.
Right. So if we wanted to add a preschool pool to this project, for example. All right, let's call the question. Do we need a roll call vote for this? Probably not, right? I think yes, we do. No, we don't. Okay, so all in favor of the sense of the meeting. Opposed? Okay, Karen and Wendy, I didn't get your votes.
Because we're abstaining.
All right. So that passes 6-2.
602.
Sorry, thank you. 602. Thank you. All right. Thank you everybody. All right. So, next on the agenda. Okay, so next we have the litigation it's listed. Fine, okay. So back to the other half. Fourth goal. So see if we can do this expeditiously. So if we go through the different.
Mike, I can't hear you. You're not near the mic.
Sorry, I didn't have the button pressed, but I was saying very wise and profound things. If we, so we back to the board goals. So if we do this expeditiously, the idea here, given what Tom was sharing, identifying either individuals or committees or some group of board members to kind of be the point person for these individual bullets. So, for example, there's no vote here, so this is just for discussion purposes, but then I'll record everything and send this out. So for example, the first bullet under number 1, evaluate board presentations according to growth metrics within the strategic plan at individual student levels. Michael, if you can put the board goals back up when you get a chance, it would probably be helpful for people that aren't completely discussed with us and are still watching. Particularly for special education, disadvantaged ESL, and advanced students. It would make sense to make that the ownership of that bullet the strategic plan committee. Makes sense.
Yeah. So I was just actually going to say, some of these seem like they are pretty much clear where they're going and who's. I don't know.
Quick.
Yeah.
I'll be.
And I was going to say the ones that are up for question, if
Go ahead.
people are interested, should they just? I mean, are we going to decide tonight, or do you want to just have people send you?
I'd
We can
love
decide
to-
what's open and
In all honesty, I'd love to decide tonight so that we can,
Okay.
so
Just-
everybody can be thinking. Yeah,
it's just getting late. So
I'll move super fast. I hear it. Oh, yeah, you're.
Still in Midtown Manhattan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so the second two bullets after that, evaluate. I've got things pre-marked, so hopefully it'll work fast. Evaluate start times and the staffing models, and evaluate the administrative structure and scheduling. I'd like to suggest both of those are the ownership of the executive committee. We talked about either that or negotiations committee. Because both of those have to do with labor relations in a way. But I think executive might make more sense than negotiations, because negotiations is really purely about making the contract, if that makes sense. Yep, go ahead, Karen.
so I think for
Mike,
second-
we see your email.
My email?
Yeah.
Somebody's email is displayed on the screen.
Okay. Michael fix that.
Anyway, no, what I was just going to say was for the second bullet point, I think from some of the stuff that Tom was saying, like, staffing models, staff satisfaction, consistency across school buildings, that's not necessarily per se our purview to oversee. It's just, we're seeing, if we ask for a report on something to have, see what it has on student achievement, I still think that goes with the first one, because it's not really up for us to evaluate some of those things, because that's what Tom was pretty much pointing to, right? Like, it's not for us to be involved in staff satisfaction, staffing models, consistency. And I think that's partially what Dr. Jones was talking about last week in a discussion about giving her direction to focus on some of those things.
Yeah, I hear you. I guess when I said executive committee, I was assuming the superintendent would be part of that. Yeah. I don't know if other people have thoughts on that.
I'm just saying, is that, as it pertains to student achievement, that's a board overall thing. That's why I'm saying, I just think maybe that one is an overall, just based on what Tom was saying.
Mike, can I ask a question? Sorry, I wasn't following. So number 1 says student learning and achievement.
On the bullets.
But isn't that whole one all the way, paragraph 1 to we are committed to, we will do this by 1, 2, 3? Shouldn't that whole thing be a group? And then we go to number 2, student support, health and safety. All the way through their 3 bullets should be another group rather than breaking it up by bullets?
This is how we have run into problems in the past, because while there were on student learning and achievement, for example, there are different board functions that fall under that. Let's go to if you go to the best one, if we work backwards, if you go to number 6, right? So supporting the identification, appointment of any new board member, that's probably all of us. But district regulations and procedures, that's probably a policy. whereas fostering conversations with faculty, that probably the executive committee, whereas the so there's some different areas here where things could fall, in all honesty.
So being that, I mean, I don't know, I didn't know that this was what we were doing tonight. I mean, I didn't review these in depth. I don't know if this is something that we might want to have a look through and share our thoughts specifically individually with you. I just, because it's clearly it's not really an action item at this point. We're just discussing. So I'm just confused, and I know it's a discussion item anyway, but I wasn't, you know, I didn't know this is what we were doing. So
I have a suggestion, which is maybe we break this up into a Google sheet and have people write in like, what are you interested in working on? Right. And then we can go back to it like that. So it's like, okay, I'm really interested in, I don't know, like looking at the high school schedule. Right. And so it's Bob, right. Or whatever. Right. And then you see, because then maybe we need to recruit people to do some of the bullets, and maybe there are 8 people that want to do the other bullet, and like that kind of thing. Because I think this is going to take a long time if we just go through it and then say who's going to raise your hand.
well, I was going to say some are very clearly like, you know, Dr. McCanty Anthony mentioned, aligned with our committees and liaison roles we already have. So I think, yeah, that's why.
Just to add to that, I think that the bullets should all be pulled out of the out of the board goals. They should be grouped by bullets, and then under each bullet grouping can be like people's names.
Yeah, an Excel sheet in the future. Fine. Okay. Those were all good suggestions. So we can, sounds good to me. We will do that. What's that?
We have fundraising. Yeah, because that goes beyond my capacity.
We're going to put Veronica in charge of it. Fair enough. Okay. So then we, thank you. So we will do that for, look for an Excel document in the near future on that. So now we are moving on to action item 3B, litigation settlement offer. So there's things we can say and things that we can't say in public. We've been talking a lot about this in private. I guess the question is there anyone who wants to talk about it? Does anyone wants to put a motion on the table here?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion to accept the settlement offer from the first selectman in Camillo v. Hirsch, subject to further pending review.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Okay. So there's not much we can say about this. We do know that we can clarify that the board did receive a offer from the first selectman. Yeah, and so I guess and there was a discussion. Go ahead, Sophie.
I would question whether this is in proper legal order, because if we're voting on a specific settlement offer, I think it should have been posted to board docs for the public to be able to review it. And furthermore, because of some various different types of computer programs that people use, many of the board members actually never had the opportunity to read this offer that was sent from Fred Camillo to Dr. McCanty Anthony until today, and also hadn't seen various drafts. So I for one feel I'm not prepared, and also I don't think that it's appropriate for us to vote on something that the public hasn't seen.
Can I answer the legal order question?
Sure.
I did ask the attorney who helped frame the motion, and he confirmed that it was in legal order. That answers that.
Can you clarify what attorney?
Mark.
Okay.
I believe that was right. You sent us all an email that we could individually speak to Mark. right? Because that's at the board, that's at the chair's discretion.
Yeah, but I
Okay.
just want to make sure you didn't, what attorney we were talking about.
I think unfortunately, I anyway wasn't privy to that conversation and didn't have, I think we would need to have written guidance from an attorney confirming that this would be in proper legal order.
I agree with Sophie. I don't feel like this is in legal order, and I don't think we should vote on it.
Especially since, as pointed out, most of us did not receive the, settlement offer until we were sitting in a meeting. So we haven't really had a chance to review anything, and the other named individuals have not had an opportunity to either.
I think the public's tired of this and they want this to end, and there's an overture here, and I think it's an opportunity to get it to move in the right direction.
Karen Kraus, I see your hand. I think you're on mute, maybe.
Sorry, thank you. This is, I agree with Paul. I think the public is tired of this. This is not a situation where the allegations are entirely unproven. An independent agency has already determined that the FOIA violations occurred. I think this board has known for months that there was a potential path toward resolution. An informal settlement proposal was put forward several months ago. And since then, this matter has consumed public resources and board attention. And I think we owe taxpayers an explanation if we intend to continue spending money on litigation rather than seriously pursuing a resolution.
Okay. Okay, you would say something?
Oh, I fully agree that I think, that we should move on from this litigation and that it doesn't benefit taxpayers to continue. I think the question is whether it's in proper legal order to vote on a settlement agreement that was sent from the first selectman to the chair of the board and wasn't shared with the rest of the board until today and hasn't been presented to the public. And this is of great interest to the public. And certainly if we were to vote on a settlement agreement, that settlement agreement should be posted for the public to review, which it hasn't happened.
Which is why he had me frame it as further pending review, subject to further pending review. So at least we're making the, move in the right direction, and then we can, we can clean this thing up.
Okay. All right, I think we probably should call the question here. All those, are you requesting a roll call?
No, I just wanted to know if you wanted me to repeat it, because there's been some conversation.
Sure, go ahead.
Motion to accept the settlement offer from the first selectman in Camillo v. Hirsch, subject to further pending review.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor of the motion on the table? Wendy? Okay. Okay, motion does not pass, 4-4. Okay. There is an existing motion from last time. There was an existing motion that I think we all felt strongly in favor of continuing, and that was authorizing the continued negotiations. And I think the idea here is that all of us want to continue with moving forward with board council and town council meeting together, preferably face to face, preferably on an expedited fashion in the next few weeks, so that certainly over the next month, so that the teams of lawyers between the town and the board can find a mutually agreed upon solution that benefits everybody. Karen.
We already voted on basically doing that last week. We still support it, but it needs to also be very clarified that it's not the town attorney, it's the attorneys representing the town.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Right. The attorneys representing the town. That is indeed what I meant.
Yes, just as the town attorney is conflicted out and can't be involved in any of this discussion or responses of questions.
Thank you. I did not mean that office. Oh.
I'm sorry, can I just ask a question? Who ultimately has authority? Does, let's say the attorneys get together and they talk, and it comes back to the board as a vote, or you get authority, Michael?
I wish, no, we would have to accept the settlement offer. And we'd take a vote on it. And at that point, it would be public. We could talk about it in private, but if we were going to speak to a public vote, it would be posted.
Okay, thanks.
I did not, because it sounded like we were okay with where we were last time. Unless you want to make a motion around the.
I would like to discuss it, and I don't think we can discuss it until somebody seconds it, and then we can always take it off the table.
Okay, so originally, to make it clear, so, and then we can move it along. All right, so I'll make it, because I said it before, in executive, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the board attorney, to direct the board attorney to meet face-to-face with attorneys representing the town to continue negotiations.
I'll second that.
Okay. So this is very similar to what we passed before. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really reiterating that the board would like to end the litigation and is very eager for our attorney to engage in settlement discussions. I think that's been the case for a long time and remains the case. And I think it would certainly be the benefit of the public and especially our schools and our students if we could put this litigation behind us. I hope that we can.
Considering the failure of the last vote, I do appreciate your urgency. I mean, I think the public has a right to the urgency on this because we keep running up bills. So the fact that you've added some things into it as it relates to expedited, and you potentially said hopefully within a month, like we need to move this thing along. Like it's a shame we can't get this done.
All right, let's call the question then. All those in favor of the motion?
The motion is just that we would continue to support settlement discussions?
Directing our
attorneys?
attorneys to meet on an expedited fashion basis, preferably face-to-face with the.
I don't remember
attorneys
the word
representing the town.
expedited in there. That's why I was asking. Okay.
Mhm. Wendy? Okay, motion passes 8-0. Is there another motion people would like to make?
I'd be
Karen.
happy to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor? All right, motion
Aye.
passes.